Sing to us, please, begged the dying aliens. Human nurse did. Then their ancestors' spirits appeared. Before we dive into this story, drop a quick hi in the comments and tell me where you're watching from. It really helps support the channel. The sterile hallways of the interstellar medical station Helios echoed with the soft hum of life support systems and the occasional urgent beep of medical alerts. Within this massive orbital facility, humanity had taken its first steps into a role they'd never anticipated. Healers to the stars. Emily Parker checked the diagnostic panel one more time before entering the quarantine ward. As the head nurse for the Xenological Intensive Care Unit, she had seen her fair share of unusual cases, but nothing had prepared her for the current crisis. The Lyrians, a species known across 3 galactic sectors for their advanced technology and peaceful diplomatic relations, were dying, and no one knew why. She took a deep breath and pressed her palm against the biometric scanner. The airlock hissed open, revealing a dimly lit room where 5 Lyrians lay in specialized medical pods. Their translucent blue skin, normally iridescent with vibrant health, had dulled to a sickly gray. Fine crystalline structures that typically adorned their elongated skulls had become brittle and were beginning to fragment. According to the medical scans, they had less than 72 hours left. Emily moved between the beds, checking vitals and adjusting medication dosages. The standard treatment protocols had proven ineffective. 3 Lyrian medical ships had already arrived, their most brilliant minds working alongside human doctors to find a cure, but the mysterious illness continued to progress. Nurse Parker, came a weak voice from the bed nearest the observation window. It was Ambassador Thelian, the most prominent of the Lyrian patients. Emily approached his bedside, tablet in hand. Yes, Ambassador? Can I get you anything to make you more comfortable? Thelian's large, faceted eyes, reminiscent of polished sapphires, fixed on her with unexpected intensity. The others and I have been discussing something. We have a request. Of course, she replied, making sure her translator was functioning correctly. I'll do whatever I can. The ambassador's breathing was labored, the crystalline structures at his temples vibrating with each exhale. We have heard that humans possess something special, a gift that few species share. Emily tilted her head, curious. What gift would that be? You sing, said Thelian simply. With your voices, you create patterns of sound that carry meaning beyond words. Emily nodded slowly. Yes, music is very important to human culture. In our research of your species, we discovered that humans often sing to comfort their dying. Is this correct? The question caught Emily off guard. She thought of her grandmother's final days, when family members had gathered around her bed, singing her favorite hymns. Yes, that's true for many human cultures. The ambassador's eyes seemed to glow slightly brighter. Then we ask, no, we beg, will you sing to us, Nurse Parker? If our time is truly ending, we would like to experience this human tradition. Emily felt her heart constrict with compassion. These beings were so far from home, facing their end surrounded by alien technology and unfamiliar faces. She glanced at the other Lyrians, noting how they had all turned their heads toward her, waiting. I'm not a professional singer, she warned gently. That is not important, Thelian replied. We wish to experience the comfort your species provides to its dying. Please. Emily took a deep breath. She wasn't on shift alone. Dr. Blake was monitoring from the adjacent lab, and the medical AIs were recording everything for research purposes. But in this moment, none of that mattered. These beings were scared, dying, and asking for the most human of comforts. All right, she said softly. I know just the song. Emily pulled a stool beside the ambassador's bed, where all 5 patients could see her. She cleared her throat, feeling slightly self-conscious under their intense gaze. Then she began to sing Amazing Grace, a song that had comforted countless humans through centuries of joy and sorrow. Her voice was clear and steady, filling the dimly lit room with gentle waves of sound. As she sang, Emily noticed something strange. The crystalline structures on the Lyrian skulls began to resonate, catching the light in unexpected ways. By the time she reached the second verse, the resonance had grown stronger, creating a harmonic accompaniment to her voice. Emily continued singing, watching in amazement as a faint blue luminescence began to emanate from the Lyrians. The light grew stronger with each note, pulsing in rhythm with the melody. The monitoring equipment started registering unusual energy readings, but nothing that indicated distress. It was during the third verse that something truly extraordinary happened. The blue light surrounding each Lyrian began to separate and take form. Translucent figures materialized in the space above each bed, beings that resembled the Lyrians, but with more elaborate crystalline structures and ancient-looking attire. Emily's voice faltered for a moment, but Ambassador Thelian raised a weak hand. "Please," he whispered, "do not stop." So she continued, her voice growing stronger as she watched the spectral figures move closer to their living counterparts. The apparitions, now clearly visible, placed ethereal hands on the Lyrians' crystalline structures. Where they touched, the dull gray began to regain some of its former luster. By the time Emily finished the song, the room was filled with a gentle blue radiance. The spectral figures had multiplied, forming a circle around each bed. They moved with purpose, performing what appeared to be some kind of ritual. Emily remained silent, afraid to interrupt whatever was happening. Ambassador Thelian's eyes had closed, but the monitoring equipment showed his vital signs were stabilizing rather than declining. The same was true for the other patients. The spirits, if that's what they were, continued their silent work, the blue light pulsing in rhythm that seemed familiar yet entirely alien. Dr. Ethan Cole burst into the room, his face a mask of confusion and scientific curiosity. "Parker, what's happening? The readings are off the charts." Emily shook her head, unable to explain. "I just sang to them as they asked. And then, these appeared." She gestured toward the spectral beings. Dr. Cole stared in disbelief. "This is unprecedented. Are those ancestors? Spirits? Some kind of energy manifestation?" "I don't know," Emily replied honestly, "but I think they're helping." The doctor approached cautiously, scanning equipment in hand. "The crystalline structures are showing signs of regeneration. Whatever's happening, it's reversing the degradation process." For hours, the spirits continued their work while the medical staff observed in astonished silence. No one dared interrupt. Occasionally, Emily would sing another song when asked, and each time, more spirits would appear, joining the others in their mysterious healing ritual. By morning, the impossible had happened. The 5 Lyrians showed signs of recovery. Their skin had regained much of its iridescence, and the crystalline structures had stopped degrading. Ambassador Thelian was the first to sit up, his eyes clearer than they had been for days. "You have given us more than comfort, Nurse Parker," he said, his voice stronger than before. "You have awakened what we had forgotten." "What exactly happened?" Emily asked, still trying to process everything she had witnessed. The ambassador exchanged glances with his fellow Lyrians. "Our species evolved from crystalline life, forms that communicate through resonance. Over millennia of technological advancement, we lost our connection to the harmonic frequencies that once bound us to our ancestors." Another Lyrian, a scientist named Valis, added, "Your singing, the particular patterns of resonance it created, matched the primal frequencies of our ancestral communication. You inadvertently activated a biological mechanism we had forgotten existed." "The illness," continued Thelian, "was not an illness at all, but a form of crystal degradation caused by generations of disconnection from our heritage. The spirits you saw were manifestations of ancestral memory, encoded in our very biology." Emily struggled to comprehend. "So my singing somehow, what? Reminded your biology of who you are?" "In the simplest terms, yes," said Thelian. "Your voice created the perfect resonance pattern to reactivate dormant cellular regeneration processes in our crystalline structures, processes that require a connection to our ancestral frequencies." Dr. Cole, who had been documenting everything, looked up from his tablet. "This could revolutionize our understanding of Lyrian physiology. If singing can trigger this response, perhaps we've discovered a new form of treatment. Ambassador Thelian nodded slowly. More than treatment, Doctor. You have helped us rediscover a fundamental aspect of our being that we had lost to time and progress. The news spread quickly through the medical station and beyond. What had begun as a desperate plea from dying aliens had turned into a profound discovery that would forever change human-Lyrian relations. Research teams were assembled, combining human musicologists with Lyrian scientists to study the phenomenon in depth. Emily found herself at the center of it all, reluctantly famous as the nurse who sang the aliens back to health. But what stayed with her most wasn't the scientific breakthrough or the diplomatic accolades that followed. It was the memory of those moments in the dim quarantine room, when her simple human voice had bridged a gap between worlds and called forth spirits from across the cosmos. As she stood at the observation window weeks later, watching as the recovered Lyrians prepared to return to their homeworld, Ambassador Thelian approached her one final time. "Our people will never forget what happened here," he said solemnly. "You have given us back more than our lives, Emily Parker. You have returned to us our heritage." Emily smiled, still somewhat overwhelmed by it all. "I just sang a song." "Sometimes," replied the ambassador, the crystals at his temples gleaming with healthy luminescence. "The simplest actions bridge the greatest divides." As Emily watched the Lyrian ship depart, carrying with it the promise of renewed cultural exploration and deeper understanding between their species, she couldn't help but wonder what other gifts humanity might possess. Gifts they took for granted, but that might one day help them connect to the wider galaxy in ways they had never imagined. Little did she know that this was just the beginning. 6 months had passed since the Lyrian incident, and the interstellar medical station Helios had been transformed. What was once a standard medical facility had become the galaxy's premier center for harmonic healing research. Emily Parker had been promoted to Chief Resonance Specialist, a title created specifically for her unique abilities. Today, she stood in the newly constructed harmonic chamber, a circular room designed to amplify and modulate sound frequencies. The walls were lined with a combination of human and Lyrian technology, creating an environment where sound could be shaped with unprecedented precision. "The Moravian delegation will arrive in 30 minutes, announced Dr. Cole, who had become the station's director after their groundbreaking discovery. "Their ambassador is quite skeptical about the effectiveness of harmonic treatment for species other than Lyrians." Emily nodded, reviewing the data on her tablet. The preliminary analysis of Moravian physiology shows promising resonance points in their cellular structure. "I believe we can adapt the technique." The Moravians were a reptilian species suffering from a degenerative condition affecting their neural pathways. Traditional treatments had proven ineffective, and they had turned to Helios out of desperation after hearing about the Lyrian miracle. "Just to be clear," Dr. Cole said, "we're not promising any ancestral spirits this time, right?" The Moravian ambassador seemed particularly uncomfortable with that aspect. Emily smiled. "I never promise spirits. They seem to make their own decisions about appearing." Since the Lyrian recovery, Emily had refined her techniques, working with musicians, sound engineers, and xenobiologists to understand why certain vocal patterns triggered biological responses in different species. They had discovered that it wasn't just the melody or words that mattered, but specific frequencies, harmonics, and rhythmic patterns that resonated with alien physiologies in ways that conventional medicine couldn't. The station's intercom chimed. "Moravian shuttle docking in Bay 3, announced the automated system. Emily took a deep breath. Here we go again. The Moravian ambassador, Skarath, was an imposing figure, 7 feet of muscular reptilian body, covered in iridescent scales that shifted color with his emotions. Currently, they displayed a pattern of skeptical orange and wary purple. "Ambassador Skarath." Emily greeted him with a respectful bow. "Welcome to Helios Station." The Moravian's vertical pupils narrowed as he assessed her. "Nurse Parker, your reputation precedes you. Though I must confess, I find it difficult to believe that vocalizations can succeed where advanced medical technology has failed." Understanding is not required for healing, Ambassador, she replied with a practiced patience. Only openness to possibility. Skarath made a sound that might have been a scoff. The Moravian High Council agreed to this attempt only because we have exhausted all other options. The neural degradation affecting our population has reached critical levels. Dr. Cole stepped forward, gesturing toward the harmonic chamber. We've prepared a specialized environment based on our analysis of Moravian physiology. If you'll follow us, we can begin the preliminary resonance tests. The ambassador followed them reluctantly, his tail twitching with nervous energy. Inside the chamber, 3 Moravian patients waited, their scales dulled to a sickly gray-green. They lay on specially designed couches, surrounded by monitoring equipment and sound modulators. Emily approached them with respect and compassion. I understand you've traveled far in search of healing. Thank you for your trust. The eldest Moravian, a female named Vizik, responded in a raspy voice. We have little left to lose, human. Our neural pathways deteriorate daily. Soon, we will lose all sense of self. Nodding solemnly, Emily moved to the center of the room where a small platform had been installed. I'll begin with baseline resonance patterns to establish which frequencies your physiology responds to most strongly. Ambassador Skarath positioned himself near the door, arms crossed. Proceed. Emily closed her eyes, centering herself as she had learned to do. Then, she began to sing, not a human song this time, but a carefully constructed series of tones designed to probe for resonance points in Moravian biology. The sound modulators around the room captured and amplified specific frequencies of her voice, directing them toward the patients. At first, there was no visible response. The Moravians lay still, their vital signs unchanged. Ambassador Skarath shifted impatiently. But then, something unexpected happened. As Emily transitioned to a lower register, incorporating a rhythmic pattern inspired by ancient Moravian drumming, discovered in archaeological recordings, the scales on the patients began to shimmer with faint luminescence. Energy readings are spiking, reported Dr. Cole, monitoring the equipment. We're seeing activity in the damaged neural clusters. Emily maintained the resonance pattern, gradually incorporating elements of a traditional human lullaby that shared similar tonal qualities. The combination created a haunting melody that filled the chamber with layers of sound. The luminescence spread across the Moravians' bodies, pulsing in rhythm with Emily's voice. The monitoring equipment began to register unprecedented neural activity in areas that had been dormant for months. Ambassador Skarath stepped forward, his scales shifting to a stunned blue. What is happening to them? Before Dr. Cole could answer, the air above each Moravian patient began to shimmer, much as it had with the Lyrians. But instead of translucent humanoid figures, what appeared were serpentine forms of light, undulating in complex patterns that matched Emily's song. Ancestral manifestations, whispered Dr. Cole, still amazed despite having witnessed similar phenomena before, but distinctly Moravian in form. The serpentine spirits encircled the patients, their movements becoming more intricate as Emily's singing continued. Where they passed, the Moravian scales regained color and luster. Ambassador Skarath fell to his knees. The Ancient Ones, he gasped. The coil-bearers of first memory. They are said to have guided our species from the primordial swamps to sentience. But they exist only in our oldest myths. Emily continued singing, maintaining the delicate balance of frequencies that had triggered the response. The serpentine spirits began to emit soft, chiming sounds that harmonized with her voice, creating a complex musical tapestry that filled the chamber. Vizik, the eldest patient, suddenly sat upright, her eyes wide with clarity they had lacked before. I can hear them, she said in astonishment. They are speaking in the old tongue. The other patients similarly showed signs of revival, their movements becoming more coordinated, their scales brightening to healthy hues of green and gold. For hours, Emily sang, adjusting her techniques as needed while the serpentine spirits worked their mysterious healing on the Moravian patients. When she finally stopped, exhausted but exhilarated, The spirits remained for several minutes before gradually fading from view. Ambassador Skarath approached Vizik, conducting his own assessment of her condition. "Impossible," he murmured, checking her neural responses. "The degradation has not only halted but reversed." "How can this be?" Dr. Cole consulted the medical scanners. "Preliminary data suggests that the specific frequency patterns activated dormant regenerative capabilities in Moravian neural tissue, similar to what we observed with the Lyrians, but with differences specific to Moravian physiology." "But the spirits," insisted Skarath, turning to Emily. "What are they? How do you summon them?" Emily shook her head. "I don't summon them, Ambassador. I simply create conditions that allow them to manifest. What they are, ancestral memories, collective consciousness, actual spirits, that's beyond my understanding." Vizik reached out, grasping Emily's hand with surprising strength. "In our oldest traditions, it is said that the Ancient Ones never truly left us, but that we lost the ability to hear their guidance. Your voice has reopened that connection." The implications were profound, not just for the Moravians, but for human understanding of consciousness, biology, and the interconnectedness of life throughout the galaxy. Word of the second miracle healing spread even more rapidly than the first. Within weeks, delegations from a dozen species had arrived at Helios Station, seeking what was now being called Parker's resonance therapy. Some came with physical ailments, others with psychological traumas, all hoping that human singing might awaken healing ancestral connections in their own biology. Emily found herself at the center of an unexpected revolution in interstellar medicine. Traditional doctors and healers from across the galaxy came to study with her, bringing their own cultural songs and sounds to incorporate into the growing practice of harmonic healing. 3 months after the Moravian healing, Emily sat in her quarters, reviewing the growing database of species-specific resonance patterns. The work was exhausting but deeply fulfilling. They had successfully treated patients from 7 different species now, each manifestation of ancestral spirits unique and culturally significant. Her door chimed, and Dr. Cole entered, looking unusually serious. "Emily, we need to talk." She set aside her tablet. "What's wrong, Ethan?" He sat heavily in the chair opposite her. "The Galactic Medical Consortium has been monitoring our work. They've sent representatives to assess what's happening here." "That was expected, wasn't it? We've been publishing all our findings." "Yes, but—" He hesitated. "There are concerns about the nature of what we're doing. Some consortium members are suggesting that we're not practicing medicine, but something closer to religious ritual. They're uncomfortable with the spiritual implications." Emily frowned. "We're healing people. The results are measurable and documented. I know that, and you know that. But the appearance of these spirits, it challenges a lot of established scientific paradigms. There are those who would prefer to explain away what we're seeing as hallucinations or some form of mass psychosis." "The patients aren't hallucinating improved health," Emily pointed out. "The Lyrians and Moravians have maintained their recovery. The Centaurians' radiation poisoning was completely reversed." Dr. Cole nodded. "Which is why the consortium hasn't shut us down. But they're sending their top researchers to investigate. And not all of them are coming with open minds." Emily sighed, looking out her viewport at the stars beyond. "So what do? We keep healing," he said simply, "and we let the results speak for themselves." The consortium delegation arrived the following week, a diverse group of the galaxy's leading medical minds, led by Dr. Zarek, a stern Arcturian known for his unwavering commitment to empirical evidence. Their first official observation was scheduled for a particularly challenging case, a Durinian suffering from a form of psychological trauma that had left him unable to communicate. Durinians were an insectoid species with a complex hive mind structure that made individual psychological treatment nearly impossible using conventional methods. Emily prepared carefully, studying everything available about Durinian neural structures and social dynamics. She had adapted her techniques for each new species, finding that success often came from blending human vocal traditions with sounds familiar to the patient's cultural background. The observation chamber was crowded with consortium officials and recording equipment when Emily entered with her patient. The Dorinian, named Trizka, trembled visibly, his compound eyes darting nervously around the room. Dr. Zarek stepped forward, data pad in hand. Nurse Parker, please note that we will be monitoring all energy readings, neural activities, and physical manifestations during this session. Any attempt to use technology to simulate the reported spiritual manifestations will be detected. Emily met his gaze calmly. No technology is needed, Dr. Zarek. Only voice and openness. She guided Trizka to the center of the room, where acoustical enhancements had been installed to maximize resonance. I'm going to sing now, she explained gently to the Dorinian. The sounds may feel strange at first, but try to remain receptive. The insectoid being clicked his mandibles, and what Emily had learned was a gesture of nervous assent. Taking a deep breath, Emily began to sing. She started with a rhythmic pattern that mimicked the communication clicks of Dorinian hive signals, gradually incorporating a human folk melody that shared similar mathematical patterns. The combination created an otherworldly harmony that filled the chamber. At first, Trizka remained still, showing no response. Dr. Zarek made notes on his pad, expression skeptical. Other consortium members whispered among themselves. Emily continued, undeterred, shifting to a more complex pattern that incorporated elements of Dorinian mating calls, sounds that formed the basis of their deepest social bonds. As she reached a particular harmonic interval, Trizka's antennae began to vibrate visibly. Energy signature detected, announced one of the consortium technicians, sounding surprised. Similar patterns to those recorded in previous sessions, but with species-specific variations. The air around Trizka began to shimmer, but instead of distinct spectral forms, what materialized was a swirling cloud of iridescent particles that moved with collective intelligence. The particles arranged and rearranged themselves in complex geometrical patterns that corresponded to Emily's vocal rhythms. Dr. Zarek stepped back, visibly startled. What is this? Dr. Cole, monitoring from nearby, responded quietly. If the pattern holds, these are manifestations of Dorinian ancestral consciousness. Unlike the more individualized forms we saw with Lyrians and Merovians, this appears to be a collective representation, consistent with Dorinian hive psychology. The swirling particles surrounded Trizka, creating pulsing patterns that touched his exoskeleton in precise locations. Where they connected, small bursts of light transferred from the swarm to the patient. Trizka's trembling ceased, and his posture straightened. Then, to everyone's astonishment, he began to vocalize, not in the broken, discordant manner that had characterized his trauma, but in clear, melodic Dorinian speech patterns that harmonized with Emily's singing. He's communicating, gasped a Dorinian specialist among the observers. The syntax is archaic, but unmistakably structured. He's speaking in high formal, a dialect not used in common communication for centuries. Emily maintained her song, adapting to incorporate elements of Trizka's vocalizations. Together, they created a duet of human and Dorinian sounds that seemed to strengthen the manifestation of the ancestral swarm. For nearly an hour, this communion continued, with Trizka becoming increasingly animated and vocally expressive. When Emily finally ended her song, the swarm of particles lingered briefly before coalescing into a pulsing sphere that entered Trizka's body through his spiracles. The Dorinian stood perfectly still for several moments, then turned to address the assembled observers. "I am whole again," he said, his translator rendering clear, confident speech. "The ancestral collective has restored the broken pathways in my mind pattern. I can feel the connections to my hivekin once more." Dr. Zarek approached cautiously, scanning devices in hand. "Impossible," he muttered, reviewing the readings. The neural damage was extensive and irreversible according to all established medical understanding. "And yet," said Emily quietly, "he stands healed before you." The implications of what they had witnessed left the consortium representatives in disarray. Some demanded immediate explanations based on conventional science, while others argued for the expansion of scientific parameters to include the phenomena they had observed. In the days that followed, Emily continued her work under intense scrutiny. Each successful healing added to the growing body of evidence that human singing, properly attuned to specific alien physiologies, could awaken something profound and healing across species. Dr. Zarek, initially the most skeptical, eventually approached Emily after watching his fifth successful treatment. "I have spent my career dismissing what I could not measure," he admitted. "But what happens in these sessions? It exists in the space between our scientific instruments. We can measure the effects, but not fully capture the process." Emily nodded. "Perhaps that's as it should be. Some things must be experienced rather than dissected." The Arcturian doctor considered this. "My people have ancient songs, preserved but no longer sung. Stories say they once healed wounds of body and spirit. I dismissed these as primitive superstition. Maybe it's time to sing them again," Emily suggested gently. Dr. Zarek's eyes reflected a complex mixture of scientific curiosity and awakening wonder. "Perhaps it is." The consortium's final report, published 6 weeks later, sent shockwaves through the galactic medical community. While careful to maintain scientific language, it acknowledged that Parker's resonance therapy represents a paradigm shift in our understanding of interspecies healing and raises profound questions about the nature of consciousness, ancestral memory, and the biological encoding of cultural heritage. More significantly, the report recommended the establishment of resonance healing centers throughout the galaxy, combining the vocal traditions of humanity with the cultural sounds of each recipient species. For Emily, the professional validation was gratifying, but secondary to the personal transformations she witnessed daily. Each healing session connected her more deeply to the vast tapestry of galactic life. Each spirit manifestation a reminder that beneath their biological differences, all sentient species shared connections to their pasts that could help heal their futures. 1 year after the first Lyrian healing, Emily stood in the observation lounge of Helios Station, watching as ships from 12 different worlds docked to deliver patients and healers to the now-famous facility. Dr. Cole joined her, offering a cup of coffee. "Did you ever imagine this would be your legacy when you signed up as a xenological nurse?" he asked with a smile. Emily shook her head. "Never. I just wanted to help." "Well, you've done that and more." The Galactic Council is considering creating a new diplomatic designation for human singers. Harmonic ambassadors, they're calling it. Your voice has opened doors that centuries of traditional diplomacy couldn't budge. "It's not just my voice," Emily said thoughtfully. "It's something all humans can learn to do. We're discovering that different human vocal traditions work better for different species. Tibetan throat singing has proven remarkably effective with silicon-based life forms. African vocal percussion techniques resonate strongly with crystalline species." Dr. Cole nodded. Humanity finally found its place in the galactic community, not through superior technology or military might, but through something as simple and profound as singing to comfort the dying. Emily's thoughts returned to that first night with the Lyrians, when a desperate request had led to an unexpected miracle. They weren't just asking for comfort, she realized. They were asking for connection. And maybe that's what all healing really is, reconnecting what has become disconnected. As she watched the stars beyond the viewport, Emily hummed softly to herself, feeling the subtle vibrations in her throat that could now bridge worlds and awaken ancestral spirits across the cosmos. In finding a way to heal others, humanity had discovered its own unique gift, a gift as old as their species and as new as the stars they now traveled among. In the medical labs below, patients from a dozen worlds waited for the healing power of a human voice. And in the vast expanse beyond, countless more would come, seeking what only humanity could provide, a song that connected past to present, ancestors to descendants, and one species to another across the infinite diversity of galactic life. Emily Parker, once just a nurse trying to provide comfort to the dying, had become something more, a bridge between worlds, a healer of bodies and souls, a singer whose voice awakened the ancient wisdom sleeping in the very cells of alien life. And as humanity spread throughout the stars, they carried with them not weapons or technologies to impress other species, but something far more powerful: their voices, raised in songs that could heal the galaxy. 2 years after the first Lyrian healing, the interstellar medical station Helios had expanded into a sprawling complex 3 times its original size. What had begun as a single human nurse singing to comfort dying aliens had evolved into the Galactic Harmonic Healing Institute, where practitioners from over 30 species studied and refined the art of resonance therapy. Emily had just finished a particularly challenging session with a crystalline being from the Andromeda Galaxy when an urgent message arrived from Dr. Cole. "Emily, we have a situation." His voice was tense over the comm. "A Chronos vessel has entered our system. They're requesting your presence specifically." Emily felt her heart rate quicken. The Chronos were one of the oldest known species in the galaxy, so ancient and advanced that they rarely interacted with younger civilizations. Their technology was rumored to manipulate time itself, and they were regarded with a mixture of awe and fear by most spacefaring races. Me? Why would they ask for me? They wouldn't say. Just that they've been observing our work from afar and now have an urgent need for your specific abilities. They've sent a shuttle to dock with us in 30 minutes. Emily quickly freshened up and changed into her formal uniform, a blend of traditional medical attire and the ceremonial garb that had become standard for resonance healers. By the time she reached the diplomatic docking bay, a crowd of curious staff had gathered. The Chronos shuttle was unlike any vessel Emily had seen before, seemingly constructed of flowing metal that moved like liquid while maintaining structural integrity. When the entrance aperture formed in its side, 2 Chronos emerged. They were tall, slender beings with skin that shimmered between translucence and opacity, revealing glimpses of complex internal structures that defied conventional anatomy. Their faces were elongated, with large, multifaceted eyes that reflected light in hypnotic patterns. They wore no visible technology, yet an aura of immense power surrounded them. The taller of the 2 approached Emily, moving with a grace that seemed to bend the space around it. When it spoke, its voice resonated directly in her mind rather than through the air. "Emily Parker." The mental voice had a musical quality that reminded her of distant wind chimes. "I am Elder Saiyan of the Chronos continuity. We have traveled far to seek your assistance." Emily bowed respectfully. "I'm honored by your presence, Elder Saiyan. How may I help you?" "We must speak privately," the Chronos communicated. "What we require involves matters of great temporal significance." Dr. Cole led them to the station's most secure conference room, where the Chronos requested that all recording devices be deactivated. Once they were alone, Elder Saiyan revealed the purpose of their visit. "Our species exists partially outside your linear time stream," the Elder explained. "We perceive time as a malleable medium rather than a fixed progression. This perception has allowed us to achieve great things, but it also carries unique vulnerabilities." The second Chronos, introduced as Temporal Healer Thalen, continued the explanation. "A disturbance has appeared in what you would call our collective temporal field, a dissonance that is causing fractures in our continuity. Several of our eldest members have begun to experience a phenomenon we cannot explain. Their connection to our temporal lineage is weakening." Emily tried to comprehend what they were describing. "You mean they're dying?" "Not precisely," Elder Saiyan responded. "They are becoming untethered from our ancestral time stream. Without this connection, they will not die but rather become lost, adrift in moments without context, experiencing existence without continuity. It is a fate worse than death for our kind," added Thalen. "To exist without connection to our temporal ancestry would be to lose all meaning." "I'm so sorry," Emily said, "but I don't understand how I could possibly help with something so beyond human understanding." Elder Saiyan's multifaceted eyes seemed to look through her rather than at her. "We have observed your work with other species. When you sing, you somehow create resonance patterns that re-establish connections between beings and their ancestral lineages. This ability transcends conventional science. It touches something fundamental in the structure of consciousness itself. We believe, Thalen continued, that properly attuned humans singing might create harmonic patterns that could stabilize the temporal fractures affecting our elders. Emily felt overwhelmed by the responsibility being placed on her. But your species is so advanced. Surely your understanding of temporal physics far exceeds anything humans could contribute. Technology cannot solve this problem, Elder Saiyan stated simply. The disturbance exists in a realm where scientific instruments cannot reach, the space between moments, where consciousness and time intersect. Your gift operates in this same ineffable realm. Dr. Cole, who had remained silent until now, spoke up. This would be entirely experimental. We've never attempted resonance therapy with a species that exists partially outside conventional spacetime. We understand the risks, Thalen responded, but we have exhausted all other possibilities. Our temporal models suggest a high probability that your techniques will succeed where our technology has failed. Emily took a deep breath, considering the implications. I would need to learn about Chronos physiology, cultural sounds, anything that might help me adapt my techniques to your unique biology. We have prepared comprehensive information, Elder Saiyan said, producing a crystal sphere that projected multidimensional diagrams into the air between them. But more importantly, we must act quickly. The affected elders are currently in stasis aboard our mothership in high orbit. Their temporal fracturing accelerates with each passing moment. After reviewing the Chronos data, much of which stretched the limits of human comprehension, Emily agreed to attempt the treatment. She was transported to the Chronos vessel, a massive ship that seemed to exist simultaneously in multiple states of construction and decay. Inside, she was led to a circular chamber where 7 ancient Chronos lay in specialized containment fields. Unlike the healthy Chronos, whose skin shimmered with ordered patterns, these beings flickered erratically, sometimes appearing solid and sometimes almost completely transparent. Occasionally, one would temporarily vanish entirely before reappearing in a slightly different position. They are experiencing multiple timelines simultaneously, explained Thalen. Their consciousness cannot maintain coherence across the fragmenting time streams. The chamber itself was unlike any healing environment Emily had worked in before. The walls seemed to shift and flow, occasionally revealing glimpses of strange landscapes or unfamiliar stars before solidifying again. This room exists at a temporal nexus point, Elder Saiyan told her, noticing her fascination. It allows for greater stability when working with beings experiencing temporal fracture. Emily centered herself, reviewing what she had learned about Chronos physiology and cultural history. Their data had included recordings of ancient Chronos communication patterns, complex harmonic sequences that predated their evolution into partially non-corporeal beings. Drawing on these patterns, Emily began to sing. She started with a series of sustained tones that matched the fundamental resonance frequencies of healthy Chronos biology. Gradually, she incorporated elements from the oldest Chronos communication recordings, creating a bridge between their present and their distant past. At first, there seemed to be no response from the fractured elders. They continued to flicker in and out of temporal coherence, their forms unstable and disconnected. Emily persisted, adjusting her technique, searching for the right combination of sounds that might reach across their fractured timeline. It was when she began incorporating elements of human whale song, with its complex overtones and sub-bass frequencies, that something changed. The erratic flickering of the Chronos elders began to synchronize, pulsing in rhythm with her voice. The air in the chamber started to shimmer, not with the discrete spectral forms she had seen with other species, but with something far more abstract, rippling waves of temporal energy that moved like currents in an invisible ocean. These currents surrounded the elders, creating patterns that matched the rhythm of Emily's song. As she continued singing, the temporal currents grew stronger, more defined. They began to weave themselves into complex structures around each elder, not ancestral spirits in the conventional sense, but manifestations of temporal lineage, connecting each being to their past and future simultaneously. Elder Saiyan, observing from nearby, communicated directly to Emily's mind. Continue. You are re-establishing their connections to the temporal ancestry. It is working. Emily maintained the song, her voice rising and falling in patterns that seemed to come not entirely from her own creativity, but from some deeper understanding that had awakened within her. The temporal manifestations responded, growing more intricate and stable with each phrase. One by one, the fractured chronos began to stabilize. Their forms solidified, the erratic flickering replaced by the smooth, shimmering characteristic of healthy members of their species. The temporal currents surrounding them became permanent structures, visible manifestations of their reconnection to the time stream of their ancestors. After what seemed like hours but might have been minutes in the strange temporality of the Chronos vessel, Emily completed her song. The chamber fell silent, but the temporal structures remained, now fully integrated with the seven elders. The eldest of them, a being introduced as Time Weaver Corian, rose from the containment field. Its form was now fully stable, radiating a sense of profound temporal depth. For the first time since the fracturing began, Corian communicated, its mental voice carrying echoes that seemed to reverberate from both past and future. I exist fully within the continuity again. I can feel the presence of my ancestors across all moments of our existence. Elder Saiyan approached Emily, who stood exhausted but exhilarated by what had transpired. You have done what we could not, Emily Parker. You have preserved the temporal ancestry of our oldest living members. I don't fully understand what happened, Emily admitted. The manifestations were unlike anything I've seen with other species. What you witnessed were not individual ancestral spirits, but manifestations of temporal continuity itself, explained Thalen. Your voice somehow created resonance patterns that realigned our elders with their proper position in the time stream of our species. Corian moved closer, its multifaceted eyes studying Emily with ancient wisdom. You have given us more than healing, human. You have provided insight into the fundamental nature of existence itself. What do you mean? Emily asked. For millennia, we Chronos have believed that our perception of time as a malleable medium was unique to our species, an evolutionary advantage that separated us from younger races. But what you have demonstrated today suggests something profound, that all conscious beings, regardless of their apparent temporal limitations, are connected to time in ways that transcend conventional physics. Elder Saiyan continued the thought. Your ability to re-establish our connection to our temporal ancestry through something as seemingly simple as vocalized sound patterns suggests that consciousness itself may be the true medium of time, not the physical universe as we have long assumed. The implications were staggering. If what the Chronos suggested was true, then the human ability to heal through singing was not merely a biological or cultural phenomenon, but something that touched the very fabric of reality itself. When Emily returned to Helios Station, she brought with her not only the gratitude of one of the galaxy's most ancient species, but also new insights that would transform their understanding of resonance healing. The Chronos, traditionally isolationist, had pledged to share portions of their temporal knowledge with humanity in return for Emily's assistance, knowledge that could revolutionize human understanding of consciousness and its relationship to time. In the months that followed, researchers from across the galaxy flocked to Helios to study what was now being called the Parker phenomenon. The diversity of ancestral manifestations, from the humanoid spirits of the Lyrians to the collective swarm of the Dorinians to the temporal structures of the Chronos, suggested that what Emily had awakened was not a single, uniform process, but something that expressed itself uniquely through the evolutionary and cultural heritage of each species. What remained constant across all these different expressions was the fundamental power of human singing to re-establish connections between beings and their ancestral lineages, connections that proved vital for healing in ways that transcended conventional medicine. 3 years after that first desperate request from dying Lyrians, Emily stood before the Galactic Council, as they formally recognized a new field of interspecies healing. Representatives from over 200 worlds watched as she demonstrated the techniques that had begun with a simple act of compassion and grown into one of the most significant discoveries in galactic medical history. We do not yet fully understand the mechanism by which human singing activates these ancestral connections, Emily told the assembled delegates. But we have proven beyond doubt that the effect is real and reproducible across species boundaries. What began as comfort for the dying has become a gateway to healing that touches body, mind, and whatever we might call spirit. As she looked out at the diverse beings gathered before her, some humanoid, others utterly alien in form, Emily reflected on the extraordinary journey that had led her here. From a nurse trying to provide comfort to dying aliens to a pioneer of a healing art that was reshaping galactic medicine and interspecies relations. Perhaps the greatest lesson we have learned, she continued, is that beneath our biological differences, all conscious beings share a connection to their past, to the long evolutionary journey that shaped them and the cultural heritage that defines them. When that connection is broken or weakened, illness and suffering often follow. When it is restored, healing becomes possible in ways we are only beginning to understand. After the formal recognition ceremony, Ambassador Thelian of the Lyrians, now fully recovered and serving as his people's chief diplomatic representative, approached Emily with a ceremonial gift, a crystal carved in the shape of a human throat, mounted on a base of precious metals from a dozen worlds. This will be displayed in the Great Hall of Healing on Lyria Prime, he told her. A permanent reminder of the day a human nurse sang to comfort the dying and change the galaxy forever. Emily accepted the gift with gratitude, but her thoughts were already turning to the future. There were still many species who had not yet benefited from resonance healing, many mysteries of ancestral manifestation that remained unexplored. That evening, as she stood alone in the observation dome of the council building, watching the stars of a galaxy that now seemed more interconnected than ever before, Dr. Cole joined her. "Quite a day," he said, standing beside her. "From a single quarantine room to the Galactic Council in 3 years. Not bad for someone who once claimed she wasn't a professional singer." Emily smiled. "I'm still not. I just found a way to help people when they needed it most. And in doing so, you discovered something fundamental about life throughout the cosmos. Not bad for a day's work." They stood in comfortable silence for a while, contemplating the stars and the countless worlds that circled them, worlds where beings now looked to humanity not for technology or resources, but for the unique gift of healing through song. "What's next?" Dr. Cole finally asked. Emily's eyes remained on the stars, her voice quiet but determined. "We keep singing. We keep healing. We keep learning. And most importantly, we keep listening to the stories and songs of every species we encounter, finding the connections that bind us all together across the vastness of space and time." As if to emphasize her point, she began to hum softly, a simple melody that carried within it echoes of humanity's oldest songs. In the quiet dome, surrounded by the light of countless stars, it sounded like a promise and a beginning all at once. Somewhere in the vast cosmos beyond, ancestral spirits waited to be awakened, connections waited to be restored, and healing waited to be discovered. And humanity, once a species that had wondered about its place among the stars, had finally found its voice, a voice that could bridge worlds, awaken the past, and heal the future. All because a human nurse had answered when dying aliens begged, "Sing to us, please." And that was the end of the story. If you listened all the way to here, don't forget to leave feedback about what you thought of the story in the comments, whether positive or negative. Your feedback helps us improve. Also, leave your like and subscribe to the channel for more stories like this one. And I'll leave here on the screen another video that I'm sure you'll like. Big hug, and see you in the next story.